Hi, everyone, and welcome to the ASO Conversation series. I'm your host, Tom Moore, the Director of Marketing for the Akron Symphony. Our special guest today is Matt Dudack, a member of our percussion section and who has been with the orchestra since 2000. Welcome, Matt.
Hello, how you doing?
Alrighty, how you doing today?
Great.
Well, that's good. So when we talk about being a member of the percussion section, we're really talking about a wide variety of instruments. So can you kind of explain to people who might not be familiar and talk a little bit about
Sure.
what you've actually played over the years in a concert?
Okay, I can go through the entire list if you like, or I can give you the sort of top 10. Basically, um, in our orchestra, we play, we divide it up depending on assignments. We do everything but pretty much play timpani, and sometimes we do timpani because timpani is its separate chair. But I played everything from bass drum to cymbals to xylophone to bells to chimes to triangle to tambourine to snare drum to rocks to bottles to steel drums to all kinds of different things, shakers and tambourines and hand drums, just everything you can think about that you strike, shake, or scrape. I've even played the CD player one time when we did. I think Pines of Rome has the birds at the end, and I had to hit go. And it's fun because I got a doubling because that counts as an electronic instrument. So a little bit of everything.
Well, that's good. That definitely that variety probably helps keep it really interesting.
Well, yeah, it's a challenge. When you audition for the orchestra, you're not just playing one instrument. You have to play, snare drum and all the different mallet instruments, bells and xylophone. Usually a marimba solo, bass drum excerpts, tambourine excerpts, triangle excerpts, cymbal excerpts, and you're carrying in a load of gear just to do an audition. And when we have a concert, it varies. Depending on what the instrumentation is, what the programming is for that concert. But I typically, the snare drum parts, the more advanced parts, the excerpts and things, usually Rob plays those as principal. But if I'm given a snare drum part and I haven't played snare drum in a while, I got to keep those chops going. And okay, if I have to do this, if I have to do this technique, if I have to play this instrument that has a special technique, I got to kind of brush the dust off a little bit and try to keep everything going. So when you do get called to play something, it's just a matter of refreshing your technique, and because all of those various instruments have different techniques, using different muscles, and I find the older I get, the easier it is to recall those, because I have experience, But it's a lot of variety for sure, which is one of the things I enjoy about playing percussion.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting. Um, so you kind of mentioned a little bit about, when you had to audition, when you go to an audition and kind of the muscle memory and everything. So, you're coming up on, it's been 20 years now that you've been with us. What kind of memories do you have of your first season or those first couple of years with the orchestra?
A lot of fear. The first, I'm trying to think if I played with the orchestra as a grad student. I think I may have once, like a Parks concert or something. After I graduated I did my master's at Akron, and then stayed on to run the steel band and work with the percussion ensemble and percussion studio. The first year, when I auditioned, I was a 1-year replacement for a person who was taking a 1-year leave in the percussion section. So I auditioned for that, got in, and went through that season, kind of just, this is cool, I get to play with the orchestra. I wasn't thinking anything long term at that point. And then after that season, that particular person decided to resign, to retire from the orchestra, or go on to a different career path. And so I had to re-audition, and that was for Maestro Yahweh Wang. And the first year, I think it was, I don't remember who I auditioned for. It might have been Eric Benjamin. I'm not sure, because this was after Alan Balter had passed away. We went through a season of guest conductors, and then they selected Maestro Wang, and then I auditioned for her the second time and got in. And that first year you're on parole, so or probation, not parole. Not parole. That's totally different. I haven't been to prison, I promise. No, probation. So that first season, you're really kind of making sure, you do the audition, but then you have to you got to be good enough to play every concert and be ready for every concert and play well at those concerts, and otherwise they could not give you tenure. So, I was a little lucky because I was playing with my teacher, Dr. Larry Snyder, who is the longtime principal percussion of the symphony for 30 something years, and I had studied with him, and he kind of it was good because he's familiar, but it's also like you're playing with other musicians who you don't know as well, and you're constantly making sure that you're up to the level, and I've always put my kind of put pressure on myself to play at the highest level possible I could, to be the best I could, like every musician for the most part. Nobody goes in saying, I'm going to sort of, halfway do it today, mail it in. No, you kind of go for it every time, and that's the way I was trained. So, but those moments where you got those first big cymbal crashes or solos or excerpts you have to play, and you're there in front of the whole orchestra, it's pretty intimidating. And it's I don't remember any real specific from the first season. I'd have to look at the program. I don't remember.
Okay. So you've been around, long enough now with the orchestra. How have you kind of seen it grow during your time with the orchestra?
Yeah, I think it's gone through a lot of changes. The one thing I've noticed is that the orchestra tries to sort of, which I think is good, is create with a smaller orchestra like the Akron Symphony. It's allowed to be a little more nimble, take a few more chances, and do things like the family concert series. We did a family concert thing years ago that was like on Sundays, which was really cool, like hour-long concerts that had combined classical music with movie soundtracks, things like that, in order to get families and kids involved, younger people in particular. That was kind of cool. Doing some other things with one of the biggest concerts I enjoyed the most was the ASO Percussion concert we did, where they did the David Lang concerto, and so we had the ASO guys in, and then this concerto. We did another piece, I forget, an overture, and then we did all the planets, and that was a huge, lot of fun, big highlight concert for me, But I think doing contemporary music is something I think is very important. To build the repertoire, and at one point Beethoven and Mozart was contemporary music, and the music we have today, obviously a lot of it's very different, but doing things like Sounds of Akron, I think that our orchestra has been creative in that way, and coming up with some unique programming ideas. A lot of it goes to Chris, of course, but you also have to have other people involved who say, yeah, that's a good idea, or no, we're not going to do that. We did something a few years ago. We got a grant to do pre-concert drumming stuff called, what do we call it? The Rhythm Experience, I think is what we call it. It was sponsored through a Knight Foundation grant.
Okay.
And it was for Summer Parks concerts, and we were able to bring drumming to the audience. These kids came up and played, and they made their own steel drums, and then I played steel drums on the concert, and they got to play along at one point. And it was just really kind of you don't see that in every orchestra, I'll say that,
Okay. So let's go back even further now to the very beginning. How did you start your musical journey? What got you into music?
Well, I remember playing in general music class in elementary school. And whenever we got to play like the Orff instruments, the xylophones, and the little, a pair of timpani or something, or a pair of little drums, and I always enjoyed that. And then I got into band in 4th grade and wanted to play the drums because my friend Tim played the drums, so I'm like, I want to be like him. And I did not like my band director, and I quit after 4th grade. And then I really still wanted to play, but this guy just kind of rubbed me the wrong way as a 4th grader, whatever that means. So then my friend convinced me to come back in 6th grade, and at that point I played in 6th grade band. I started taking drum lessons with a drum set teacher at a local music shop, a guy named Fred Bocchino, who was just a great influence and a really great teacher and taught me how to practice and how to be patient and work through things as a student. And I was really lucky. My middle school band director and my high school band director, this is in Windsor, Connecticut. These two guys, my middle school director was Frank Hooper, and he was a gigging percussionist besides middle school band director. He played with all the big shows that came through Hartford, and he would play like if I don't know, whatever kind of, Tony Bennett comes through, and he would get called to play the percussion book, for that kind of thing. And so he was a gigging freelancer as well as a band director. And then my high school band director, Jim Noga, was also a gigging drum set player besides band director. And so I had these two really good percussion focused, influences. They were great teachers to begin with, great band directors, but plus my private teacher. And I just kind of, fell in love with it. Had in high school, I had band 5 days a week, first period every day for 4 years. And that's just how I started my day. And eventually, got into some regional youth orchestras and honor orchestras and bands and concert bands, things like that, all state kind of stuff, and just kind of thought hey, this could be really fun. And when I told my band director, my high school band director, I wanted to go into music, he discouraged me. He said, you shouldn't do it. It's way too hard. It's too difficult. It really takes a lot of energy and passion. And I'm like, well, I think I want to do that. And so he's like, all right, well. Then he kind of helped me after that, and he sold me a marimba for a really good price that I could practice on, get my auditions together, and put me in touch with a great teacher at the Hart School of Music through the community division named Dr. Rose Small. And Rose was great. She helped me get through, high school and audition for college, and then, of course, the phone has to ring. It's someone's probably a poll worker or something trying to
silence your cell phones, please.
Yeah, that's the landline. Anyway.
I know.
But it'll go off in a second. Anyway, so I had some great teachers that helped guide me towards music, and my mom was very supportive. My father was like, how are you going to make money, that kind of thing. So not to throw my dad under the bus, but he was a little more realistic about it, and I went to school to get a music ed degree at the University of Hartford, the Hart School of Music, and I remember playing I got called as a sophomore or freshman, I forget. My teacher said, hey, I need someone to play hand drum. This was hand drum, so congas, I guess. I know, some kind of a hand drum with a guest children's choir. They were performing for this workshop. And you just got to go and play. And I think it was something like, I had to play like boom, 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 boom. That's all I had to do for the whole piece. It was the easiest drum part in the world. Why they hired me, I have no idea. So I went and played this thing, did a rehearsal in the afternoon, played in the concert in the evening. And so I told my dad about it. And I said, yeah, I played, about 10 minutes of rehearsal. And then the gig was at night. It was, half hour. And I made $200. And he said, what? He's like, how long did you work? I said, yeah, about total of about an hour. And, I got paid this much. And he's like, oh, okay, well, maybe this thing could work. So, so that kind of helped convince him. But it's just something I always loved playing and playing with other people. And it was just, I don't know, it seemed obvious. I had to do it.
Okay. So can you kind of put into words a little bit, what is it that you enjoy about playing the percussion instruments, or a particular percussion instrument?
Well, we already talked a little bit about the variety. The variety is nice. Mm-hmm. Like if I had to play one instrument all day, I think I'd go bananas. I like that I can play different instruments as well as different styles, depending on what I'm doing. Playing with the symphony is a great outlet for me in that sort of musical genre, I guess, or that part of my day is I get to play with an orchestra, which is I love. It's fantastic. And I think, being able to play some of the big moments in a symphony or a symphonic work, if you get to play that big cymbal crash at the peak of whatever section of the Mahler symphony you're playing, I mean, that's something, there's a lot of adrenaline there. Mm-hmm. And It's fun knowing that you're kind of hitting that big climax with the orchestra together, and adding that extra oomph or whatever to that. That I think that's a lot of fun. That's really I think my pulse is going up just thinking about it. Because you have those big moments. And if you're playing like Firebird, at the very end, you're playing bass drum, and you're just hitting the bass drum as not as hard as you can, but you're getting a good sound. But you're just playing those boom, big moments are just so fantastic. And for those moments, I have the best seat in the house. I mean, that drum is right there, and I can feel it. And I've always thought that what we should do more of, if possible, is have people sit. We've done things where people sit in the orchestra, but have them sit in the percussion section. It can be a little scary at times because it is loud, but it's also, I have the best seat in the house through most of our concerts. But so I think I don't know. It's fun hitting things, it's very kind of I don't know. It's very basic. The greatest thing about drumming, or about drums and percussion, is that anybody can do it. Anybody can walk up and make a sound on a drum. But the worst thing about percussion is that anybody can walk up and make a sound on a drum. That's the worst thing about it too. All of these things we do, playing a bass drum or hitting cymbals together, there's lots of technique and thought involved. And if you mess it up, I mean, there's nowhere to hide. If you mess up that cymbal crash or play it at the wrong time or something, you really have to know your part. Not that other players in the orchestra don't have to, but there's a lot of violins. Nothing against the violins, or violas. My wife's in the viola section, but there's one cymbal player, and it's a different kind of feeling or action, I guess. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. That's really good. You kind of touched a little bit on this next question when you said, your best friend was playing the drums when you first got involved with music. So do you think the musician chooses their instrument? Or do you think somehow the instrument chooses the musician?
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I guess the instrument kind of chooses you, because I never had drums around the house growing up. I do have, if you ever go to my Facebook profile, my picture there is a picture of me as an infant on the kitchen floor with all these pots and pans out. And I would pull them out of the cabinet and just wail on them. And my mom must have been nuts to let me do that. But then, she let me play drum set in the basement for years. I listened to my son play drum set here in my house. It's like 15 minutes. I can't take it. And he sounds good. But so I think, part of it is that I think I was good at it at an early age, and I picked it up. I had good teachers too who saw potential and sort of guided me and gave me the right pep talks at the right time, to continue me to develop, I guess. And good colleagues and friends. I think of my high school freshman year, I had a really good section leader as a high school freshman. I can't remember her name. I can picture her face, but she was great. Just and then in college, the same thing. The girls and guys you play with are a big influence, and I think that camaraderie and just when you're playing the drums, you get to play some really cool music. If you're playing a percussion ensemble, if you're playing in a steel band, or you're playing drum set, or even of course in the orchestra. But it's just a lot of fun to play drums with other people.
And I think that's really good when you talk about, the influence that teachers can have on you as you're going down your path. You had the one teacher say, this is going to be too hard, don't do this. But obviously you had a lot of other, people, telling you and helping you along the way, which I think, kind of really, highlights the importance of having the right person at the right time, help you move along to that next step.
Yeah. And that teacher who told me not to go into it, I mean, he was, after having gone through it, it is to be a musician it's torture. It's absolute torture, because you're striving for perfection constantly, and you never get it, but you're always trying to get there. You're trying to have the best performance, the most excellent performance you can have, and doing everything possible to get you there. But one of the things I like to share with students when we talk about the arts and and music choosing you, or the like you mentioned, the instrument chooses you, is that I went to go see the David Lang's Little Match Girl Passion, which is a great choral work, and for dancers, it's like a ballet, I guess. And in the notes, it said one of the roots of the word passion is suffering, and so yeah, you're passionate about something, but you literally are suffering about that too, because you want to have that perfect, moment or performance, or whatever you're trying to do. And I just thought that really stuck with me when I saw that. That yeah, okay, it's a lot of work. It's an extreme amount of work. They say you spend what thousands of hours in a practice room, doing what you do to get to hone your skills, and then you have to go out on stage and perform in front of people, and that's a whole nother level of preparation. So
So, in addition to your role with the orchestra, you are also an adjunct professor at the University of Akron, and you're a faculty member at Miller South, teaching the steel pan and helping with concert band. And when I got up this morning, I looked out the window and there was snow on the ground, and it was cold. And I thought, oh, I'm so excited! I get to talk to Matt today because we're going to talk about steel pan drums. And
yeah,
you
so
know, I just put it in my mind.
oops.
I started thinking, oh, we're on the beach and we're having a Mai Tai. And it's like,
Right.
steel drums. It's like, this is going to be really good. So can you kind of share a little bit the history of the steel pan and just how you
Yeah.
came
So
to play it, teach it?
let me talk about how a Caucasian Polish guy from Connecticut ends up leading one of the oldest steel bands in the country. Um, the first time I saw a steel drum was, I think we were waiting for the ferry at the Statue of Liberty, like in high school, on a school trip, and waiting for the ferry. And there was a guy playing, pan like this, just kind of noodling, playing around, and busking. But then when I got to college, at the University of Hartford, the Hart School of Music, my teacher Ben Toth, it was his first year, and Ben did his undergrad work at the University of Akron, and then went to Illinois, and then it was a faculty member, a part of the percussion group Cincinnati at the Cincinnati Conservatory of Music at the University of Cincinnati. And when he came to Hart, one of his goals was to start a steel band, because he had done that at Cincinnati and of course at Illinois and then Akron as well. And so he started a band my freshman year, and it was all his own drums. He had like 4 instruments, I think. And only the upperclassmen were allowed to play pan. Me, as a freshman, I was delegated to the engine room, which is playing cowbell, congas, tambourine, brake drum, triangle, shaker, that kind of stuff, background, what people call auxiliary percussion, which is a ridiculous term, but that's a different story. So, I got into playing pan my sophomore year, and we got more instruments made by Cliff Alexis, and who's from Trinidad, and fell in love with it. It was just an instrument that I could practice all day and never get sick of it. I remember when I first got my own pans, I set them up in my like kind of front room of my apartment, and I would just sit there and play, and just kind of like a kid plays with toys, like blocks. You just see what they can do. You stack them, you line them up, and so I was just goofing around, just playing and just enjoying the sound of these pans, and just fell in love with it. And so when I was looking for graduate schools, I wanted to do steel drums as part of that curriculum. I also am a big proponent for contemporary percussion music, experimental percussion music. So I wanted that to be a part of it too. And then when I was looking for grad schools, I ended up at the University of Akron, which has, of course, a great tradition of contemporary music, as well as steel band. The University of Akron Steel Band is the third oldest steel band, collegiate steel band in the U.S., started in 1980 by Dr. Snyder. And so, I came out here just to study percussion with him, and orchestral percussion, as well as solo percussion, as well as steel band. And once I graduated, he asked me to stay on because the current artistic director was going back to school to finish a doctoral program, and so he asked me to stay on to do the artistic director of the steel band, and I said sure. And it led to a lot of opportunities, not only in the steel band world, but there was an opening in the Akron Symphony, and that kind of worked out for me, and auditioned and got in. And so the steel band, it's a big part of what I do now. Obviously at Miller South we have a steel band. that I took over at the same time. This would have been fall of '98, and it's just been a lot of fun. I've started a couple other steel bands around another school I teach at in Canton called Canton Country Day School. It's a private school and K through 8, and I do some middle school electives. And they just recently bought a set of pans, a set of steel drums. So, and then I've also started a band out at a church in Akron, a community steel band at First Congregational Church of Akron. So kind of you kind of get bit by the bug, and then you're doing it, and it's very cool because it's kind of a young art form that's still developing. And the first steel drums you see are in the 1940s and 50s in Trinidad and Tobago. And at that point, they were pretty crude instruments, playing lots of playing pitched parts, but very basic parts, accompaniment parts. And then it developed over the last 50 years into the modern steel drum, which I've had the opportunity to play with the Symphony a number of times. Miller South Steel Band. I think the first time I met you, Tom, was when we were interviewing me for the Sounds of Akron project. I think, were you involved for that? Were you
No,
around
that
then?
was right before I started. It was the holiday concert of my first season.
Oh,
We
okay.
had, I think it was 4 or 5 of your students came out for
Right.
the holiday concert
That's right. Yeah,
and
it was
played.
Miller South kids. Yeah. So
Hmm.
I forgot about that. So we did that concert. We did a family concert with the Miller South band where we played some calypso music. It was like a program that involved the Caribbean or something. Um, Sounds of Akron, the steel band played. Plus, there was a featured part for me in that. We did a piece by Roger Zahab, an Akron composer who included the steel pan part, um, and then a couple other moments, besides the cantina scene from Star Wars, which has steel drums in it. So,
So, and then at the University of Akron, you kind of remind me, you teach uh, different types of what I guess we would call sort of like world music or world
yeah, so we
drumming.
we, we tried to at the University of Akron in the percussion studio. We try to we do classical music and prepare students for orchestra and band, things like that. And we have the steel band, of course, but we also have a group called UA Samba, which is samba batucada music, which is the percussion music from Brazil that you see during Carnival. And we also do African drumming from West Africa. Until recently, we had Bernard Woma was our guest, who would come in every other year. And Bernard has a school in Ghana, and unfortunately, Bernard passed away a couple years ago. But we're still having some of his students and come in and work with us, doing drumming and African xylophone music it's called the Jeel. Um, and so all of that, samba drumming from Brazil, the African drumming from Ghana, um, the steel band music we play, the Afro-Cuban music we learn too. Um, it's all part of a curriculum that is trying to get students to be very marketable, so they can do. I'm lucky. I feel lucky because I can play hand drums in the orchestra. With I think some. I'm not a conga player, but I can get by on congas with the orchestra pretty well. Whereas a lot of schools, you don't learn hand drumming as part of your curriculum. I think now it's more recently it's become more common, but you know, um, back in the day, if you went to conservatory, you played your excerpts for orchestra, and that was it. You didn't really touch a hand drum or play drum set and that kind of thing. So, and another thing about the world drumming, and this is from my friend Michael Spiro, who's a mentor from the Afro-Cuban side and Brazilian percussion that I've worked with for now over 20 years. He comes to Akron almost every year and does a residency. And we talk about world music, and it's a ridiculous term when you think about it. you know, isn't Mozart world music? I mean, when Mozart um, does music from what's the overture to the Seraglio? It's referencing the Middle East. So that's world music. Carmen, isn't that world music? Here's a French composer writing about a Spanish person. So it's been around for a while, and to I think to separate African drumming from Western European music is ridiculous. It's all music, right? I mean, the stuff I've heard from Cuba, where you put on a recording and it's three guys playing drums and you can't find the pulse. Like, I don't know where one is.
Mhm.
You're telling me that's not as sophisticated as Bach? I mean, there's some complexity in there. And I think, so we try to show that like, no matter what you're playing, it's all very important. And not only do you have to know about the music and the rhythms and the notes, but you have to know about the culture and the people. So, where does the conga come from? Where does the steel drum come from? What are its origins and why is that important? If you're playing snare drum in an orchestra, why is there a snare drum in the orchestra? Where does the triangle come from?
Mhm.
I mean, why do we have a triangle in the orchestra? Do you know?
Oh no, I don't. I have no idea.
No, that's because it goes back to the Crusades, and when Europeans went into the Middle East. And if you know anything about the Middle Eastern Empire, the Ottoman Empire had these dudes called Janissaries, which were like their elite fighting force. And the Janissaries had musicians that accompanied them in the battle, and they had drums and some wind instruments and cymbals and these big giant metal things. They didn't call them triangles, but they were called the Turkish crescent, or they had all kinds of jingles on them. And it was a noisemaker. It was a way to scare the enemy. If you hear all these drums and loud metal things coming towards you as a soldier who's about to fight, I mean, you're going to turn and run the other direction. So they saw all these interesting sounds in the Middle East. And then you get back to the times of Mozart, where he wants to reference the Middle East, and he plays triangle. Or the Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, the final movement, has that little Janissary march in there with bass drums, cymbals, and triangle. And so it's kind of fun to think about, like, this little goofy triangle is an instrument of like psychological warfare.
Mhm.
So obviously we're not using it the same way today. It's more of a sparkle and like a sound or a timbre that's adds to the sound or the whatever the composer's going for. So
No, that's all. Yeah, that's all really interesting. That's the kind of stuff that as a listener makes me want to go out and learn more about those kind of things, or go out and look for some clips of the kind of music that you're talking about.
yeah, and you can find
That's
some of that stuff now on YouTube, which is great. I mean, you couldn't find it years ago.
mhm.
I mean, you'd have to like really either go to the place to learn about some of this music, or listen to recordings or do your own research. So
Yeah, I'll
I mean, but
do,
this is some all this kind of stuff. My daughter calls it nerdy stuff, nerdy drum stuff. It's like I enjoy it, but I studied. We had a percussion literature class with my teacher at Hartford, where half the semester or one semester was like learning the orchestral rep and where the instruments come from. The other half was like kind of a history of 20th century percussion, because that's really our century in terms of our music and the music that we play as percussionists, solo percussion and percussion ensemble, whereas the string quartet's been around, for 300 years. So then I came here and I took the same class with Dr. Snyder, and you learn about all these little things and you read books and whatnot, and then you have to take a big comprehensive exam to get your master's in music. And I asked Dr. Snyder, what do I have to know for the test? And he's like, well, it's a master's in music. You got to know everything there is about music. So, and you have a 3 or 4 hour written exam, and then you have a 1 hour oral examination, which is, I can still picture it today. I'll never forget that moment, walking out of that oral exam, just sweating, and but you learn your stuff, you do your research, and it's a big part of it, So I encourage my students and colleagues, it's like you have to know how to play this stuff, but you also got to know where it's about, how it works, where it comes from. It's important.
Okay. So who are some of your favorite composers? Do you have anybody that when you see, coming up on the season, it's like, oh yes, I can't wait to, for that concert to come around?
Yeah,
or...
so I think, there's some pieces that are really fun to play. The cool thing that for us in the percussion section a lot of time is a lot of times we'll play different parts when that great piece comes around. So for example, we've done the planets a couple times over the last 20 years, 2 or 3 times maybe. And, I've got to play maybe the like the tambourine part, mallet parts, xylophone parts. Got to play snare drum one year, and it's like you get to play different parts on the same pieces, and that's a lot of fun. It's a little tricky though when you're playing bass drum, and you're used to playing the cymbal part, a lot of times they're opposite. You know, if you're playing like a Tchaikovsky symphony, you know, if it might go boom crash. Well, this time you're the boom. Last time you were the crash. You got to make sure you play the right part. But I don't know. Tchaikovsky's good. I really enjoyed playing the Mahler symphonies over the years. It's a lot of sitting and counting rests, but then you do get to play some, you know, really huge moments. I've been lucky because I played cymbals a lot on those pieces. We did La Mer recently, which was really fun because the cymbal part has a lot of different nuanced little gestures and it's suspended cymbals, so you're not crashing them, but they're hanging. And I think John brought in a bunch of cymbals. John Curtis, the timpanist, he has a big cymbal collection, and I brought in a bunch of cymbals, and we got some from the university as well. And we started off with about 25 different suspended cymbals, and by the time we got to the concert, I think I whittled it down to 5 that I used for the different gestures and moments. And you know, it was nice that Maestro Wilkins allowed me to choose some of those sounds, and there were some that he didn't like. Up to one at the end of this one of the movements where he wanted it to sound more like a gamelan gong type thing, and so I changed up what I was thinking. But the rest of the movements, I was allowed to kind of choose, you know, the sound that I think I was hearing, you know, because if it says cymbal, well, you could use one, or you can, I mean, there's a million different thicknesses and sizes and types. So to be able to choose that, it's artistically, it's really interesting. And then what's really cool is I hear it on stage. You know, it sounds a certain way right in front of me, but I don't really hear what the audience hears unless I listen to a radio broadcast. And on the radio broadcast, I was listening to La Mer, and I'm, you know, listening along, and I'm like, okay, that was a good choice. I like that one, you know. Okay, that one came out good too, you know. Okay, good. I feel like I made some good decisions there, you know, based on what I was hearing. And it's a little scary when you start thinking, oh, I know which cymbal that's going to be. Mm-hmm. And then you go into the cabinet and you pull out, that's the one. And you already know it. So I don't know. I think as far as composers, Shostakovich, you know, Rimsky-Korsakov, some of the big pieces we get to play. I like Stravinsky a lot. I feel like when I listen to Stravinsky, I always find something new in the piece. There's like a new layer that I discover. I find Mahler really interesting and complex. But I really like playing contemporary music, pieces I haven't heard or played before, because I feel like I'm part of like breathing life into that new thing, you know, when you're given a score that's either brand new or, you know, that hasn't been played a lot. And you can't really go to a recording maybe and refer to it and just copy what someone else did. You actually have some influence there. You have to think about, okay, what sound am I going for here? What kind of a timbre am I looking for? You know, depending on what the part is. You know, sometimes it's more obvious, but
yeah, it sounds a little scary, but it also sounds a little, you know, gives you a little bit of freedom to maybe make it your own.
yeah, I mean, it's nice if you can do that, you know, and a lot of good conductors do that. I think Chris does a nice job of letting us, you know, he'll let us know if there's a drum or something or a type of instrument that he would like to hear. You know, I can't stand it when composers say, hey, could you conductors go and say, hey, could you use this mallet? Could you do this? It's like, no, don't tell me how to play. Just tell me what sound you want. What do you want to hear? Do you want to hear it splash? Do you want to hear it zing? Do you want to hear it thud? Do you want to hear it boom? You know, I can get all those sounds. I have you know, a whole drawer full of mallets and things. I can bring a full stick bag to rehearsal, and you just tell me the sound you want, and I can try and get as close as I can. You know, it's tricky sometimes, you know, and it's, you know, it's hard enough for us to keep up, but for a conductor to keep up on all of the percussion instruments and techniques as well as every instrument in the orchestra, you know, that's difficult.
So being a percussionist, this is a little bit of a different question than I've been able to ask some other people. Do you have any favorite drummers?
Well, my favorite drummer growing up, you can see my Rush poster back here that's autographed, was my favorite band is Rush. And I remember, so Neil Peart's my favorite drum set player for sure. And I remember going I got a CD player. This is going to date me for sure. Of course, we've already been talking about how long I've been in the symphony.
Well, I was
I got
talking to
to.
somebody about having vinyl the other day
Well,
when I was
we get
talking to
vinyl.
Erica.
When I was an undergrad, we had the listening exams, and I would go to the used record store and buy all of these classical records for like 50 cents, and that's how I learned a lot of like opera and early classical music that I had to know from my history classes. But so I got a CD player, and for Christmas or something, or my birthday, whatever. And I went to the library because the local library had CDs, and I saw this album by Rush called Power Windows. And I'm like, oh, I've heard they have a pretty good drummer. So I played it and I listened to the first track, and I was like completely blown away. And that was another thing that like cemented me into the percussion world, was listening to that. And I was playing drum set at the time too, and playing in like a garage band kind of thing. And it's like, yeah, I know I want to play the drums, and however I do it, whatever uh, genre I happen to be playing, I know that's what I want to do. So after listening to that band, as far as other drummers, I grew up listening to a lot of Buddy Rich, famous jazz drummer, Louis Bellson. Um, let's see. Um, I didn't know a lot of other drummers until I was in college, really, like Stuart Copeland. So a lot of these great rock drummers. Um, Nobody grows up, at least not, I didn't grow up thinking, oh, I really love, Christopher Lamb, who's the principal with the New York Philharmonic, principal percussion. Obviously, I respect him now. I know who he is. But like in high school, I'm like, I don't know these people. My teacher, Rose, she studied with Saul Goodman, who was the famous timpanist with New York Phil for 50 years. And I'm like, okay, who's Saul Goodman? Oh, he wrote the book? Okay. So, but as far as, yeah, I mean, all those kind of, I guess, those kind of drummers are the great ones.
Mhm. It's interesting that you brought up Neil Peart, because a few weeks ago, I was listening to a radio program and they were having a big discussion about Neil Peart versus John Bonham as who the greatest
Oh, yeah,
rock
yeah.
drummer was.
Oh, Bonham's another great. I mean,
Hmm.
I came to Led Zeppelin late. I didn't listen to a lot of Led Zeppelin in high school. It was more of it after college, and for whatever reason. Um, and Bonham is definitely one of the most influential drummers. Um, just the way he plays, the stuff he plays, the swing that he has, in the way he lilts everything is amazing. It's a different kind of style than the way Neil plays. You know, Not to get too nerdy.
No, it's okay. It's
I also I like Bill Bruford a lot. That's another one of my favorites, who played with Yes early on, and then King Crimson. So
okay. So outside of, rehearsing, how do you prepare for a performance? Is there any ritual you do, any kind of special?
are you talking the day of a performance,
Well,
or
just kind of like in general. I know you practice, everybody in the orchestra practices a lot before the week of rehearsals.
sure?
Everybody, I think the regular person knows that what a rehearsal is. So yeah, I guess kind of like, on the day of a performance, is there a special go-to meal you have? Do you, meditate, or I got to do this, or it's just like,
Um,
let's go.
yeah, I think there's not really like a standard way I do it. It kind of depends. If I have to play something that's really hard, or really uh, takes a lot of concentration or focus, I tend to. So if we have a dress rehearsal in the afternoon that gets out at 4, and we come home, I usually don't have a big dinner if it's something I'm really focused and worried about. If it's music that's like I played before, or it's no sweat, I can get through it. I can have a normal whatever dinner. I don't usually like to eat anything really heavy before a concert, because it's just, you're sitting there and it's not good. So something light, even just like, I don't know, a sandwich or a banana or something, and then I'll eat something after the concert or whatever. But it kind of depends on what we're playing, depending on what I'm doing. I had an experience in college that really I think about a lot, and I come back to this a lot when we do stuff with the symphony. I had to play. There's a bell excerpt in the Magic Flute, the opera by Mozart, and the little bell part. It's actually supposed to be played on keyboard Glock, keyboard uh, bells, but it's often played on actual bells, orchestra bells. And the conductor at the time, I think I was a senior, and he said, "Hey, I know there's these excerpts. If you want to play them just for experience, you have at it." So like, great. Well, the first little excerpt, it's this little simple melody, dun, 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 just this little tune that goes on while there's dancing on stage. Well, it's at the end of Act One. So you have to sit through about 35, 40 minutes of music before you play a note. And we had 4 performances of this in school. And the first performance, I got up. I was thinking about it the whole time for 40 minutes. I got up and I was nervous and I kind of biffed and missed a few notes. So I'm like, well, that sucks. So then the next night, I got up and it was, it was better, but I still missed a couple. No, I was like, I've played this thing 100,000 times. What is going on? So then the third night, I said, all right, I got to rethink how I'm doing this. And so what I did is I sat there for 35, 40 minutes and just enjoyed the music. I listened to the timpanist. I listened to the orchestra play. And I couldn't see anything on stage because we were in the pit. But then about 5 minutes before I had to play, I knew the movement before. I just got into this zone where I just really relaxed and take a few deep breaths and just try to really focus on what I had to do. And it totally changed the way I played after that. So I just kind of went into this zone and then played and nailed it. It's like, okay, that was cool. The next night, I had to do it again. So, and I did the same thing where, I think the previous nights I was worried about it for 40 minutes. Whereas now it's just like, okay, I'm going to focus and just do this, focus on what I need to do, take a few minutes and just clear my head and then do it and just let it happen. And it was very successful. And, I've had a couple moments like that with the symphony with some, we did Porgy and Bess a number of years ago, and there's a big xylophone part. And the nice thing about that is it's right at the beginning of the show. It's in the overture, some of the hardest music right at the beginning. And so, but man, once I knew we were doing that and I had to play the xylophone part, I was shedding that part every day, reading articles about it. I was doing everything I could to be super prepared, for months before that. I think it was 2 months before I started working on it. And, I had played it in school, but I had to just really own it. And so got to the performances and I felt I was successful. And so you kind of go into this place where you're just trying to clear your head and ignore distractions and just focus on what you need to do. I've been lucky to study with Dr. Snyder, who's big into neurolinguistic programming, which is where you can kind of get into your psyche a little bit, reading things like The Inner Game of Tennis and understanding what's going on when you're performing any particular task. There's an evaluating person and then there's the one doing it. You have to get that evaluation guy out of there. And so you do that with certain, techniques of the way you think. So, and not really like a routine because it's different every concert, and sometimes, the hard stuff you kind of get fired up and all right, let's just go for it, see what happens. But I usually get to rehearsal or the concert pretty early because I don't like to, especially if I have big loud stuff, I don't like to do it when there's a lot of people on stage because it's kind of rude, even though that's what I have to do. If you have to play a loud tam-tam, a big gong note, as loud as you can, you got to know how to do that. I have to hit it a few times to understand, when it comes that time in the piece, to what it feels like. And so I'll get there early and hit a little bit. And a lot of times, there's some pieces where, we play the overture and then we don't play again until the end of the concert. And so we go and hang out in the green room and just read or hang out, talk with the other percussionists and whoever else is in there. And just sort of relax. And then when you get on stage, you go into this mode where you kind of try to concentrate and get into a different mindset. And, you have to get used to the adrenaline too when you're going to play something and how to control that, how to feel that. It's hard to replicate what that feels like.
All right. I think, have we said it all? Is there anything left to say?
I don't know. You're the one doing the interviews. What has everyone else said? Have I been as interesting as everyone else?
Oh, definitely. That's what makes these so much fun is everybody, there's a similarity to, what each of you do, but you bring your own individual, perspective, your own individual experiences to it. And I think that's what really makes this, makes this really interesting.
That's the great thing about an orchestra is you've got 75 people on stage who are all soloists, and they've been a soloist at some point in their life. And there's also times where you have to be like, you're the team player, and so and you have like 75 really strong and different personalities and takes on music and experiences in music, and to be in that group is kind of cool. I mean, it's a lot of interesting people on stage, and there's been a lot of people over the years who've come in and who've retired and things like that. The orchestra's totally different now than when I started. A lot of the principal players are different. A lot of the whole orchestra, the whole composure of it is different than it was 20 something years ago. And so, but it's really cool, being around really creative individuals and interesting people. And yeah, there's a fair share of weirdos in the orchestra. Not in the percussion section.
No names, please.
Yeah, no names, please. No, I mean, think about it. All these people that spend their whole life, and their whole existence is in a practice room for 20 years, But no, I'm teasing. But yeah, so I don't know. It's a lot of fun. Like I said, I get to, it's great being in the Akron Symphony because I get to play that style of music, I get to scratch that itch over there, and then I do a lot of teaching. So that's my passion, is really to be the best performer I can, and also a good teacher. And whether I'm teaching beginning band, 5th grade band, or graduate students at the university in a really sophisticated percussion ensemble piece, then it's all the same thing. It's all notes and rhythms, and there's composer's intention, and it's our jobs to realize, make that sound possible. One of the things my mom told me when I was thinking about this interview, what to say, and she said, she's not a musician. She doesn't, she can play the radio, but she just thinks, she's like, when you play music, it's like magic. I mean, you're making this sound out of this thing, this inanimate thing that creates sound and then gets people to feel a certain way. Mm. And that's, I mean, I don't know what you call it other than magic. I mean, musician / magician, I guess. So,
all right. I think that's a good way to end this. I think now we really have said it all. So great. Thank you for your time today, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for anybody who's listening to this. If you're trying to cure insomnia, it's probably a good way to do it.
No.
But, yeah, so great. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk to you, and again, wish everybody the best in this crazy time, and to support the orchestra. Definitely. I'd like to thank, if I could, just take a second to thank Larry and Cindy Snyder. They made a nice donation recently in support of my chair. So thank you to Larry and Cindy, if they're listening.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to everyone who is listening. This is another edition of the ASO Conversation series. We will be back soon. And until then, everyone, please stay safe.